So to start the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that I am Zooming from the Wodja country of the Noongar Nation, and I acknowledge the traditional owners, the first land carers on this land, and I pay my respects to the elders and ancestors who have handed on land care and culture from generation to generation. And I'd like to acknowledge that the tradition of land care is continuing and alive on this land. So if everyone can just put in the chat page their name, what First Nations country you're on, and perhaps the town or city you're coming from, or your group or area of interest, that'd be really great. And so because there's quite a few of us, we'll use the hand up function on Zoom, which you'll see in the reactions area if you're not familiar with it. And you can also put questions in the chat. So just to get started, we're going to do a quick Mentimeter segment, just so that our speakers know where we're all from, what our association with Landcare is. So if you could just all get out your phones. Some of you are familiar with us doing this, others of you it might be new to, and just go to www.menti.com. So that's MENTI.com. And use the code 4582376. Actually, I'll share my screen now so you can see that number. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Can't see a code, but 45.
Can you see the code?
Do you want to just call it out again, Kylie?
It's 4582376.
Done.
So you can all see the Landcare advocacy opening screen.
Yep.
Yep.
Kylie,
Okay.
we've had a couple of people just join us. If you just give them a moment to log in.
Okay. For the people that have just joined us, if you get out your phone, we're going to do an exercise on Mentimeter. So just log into www.menti, so that's MENTI.com. And once you get in there, use the code 4582376. Okay, we'll get started with the first question. So it's just a really simple question. What is your association with Landcare? And just pick the one that best suits you. How's everyone going? Is anyone not get the Menti or not get the code that needs me to repeat it? Just call out if you didn't get it.
Ella?
I've only just joined in, so sorry I'm running late.
That's okay. Just go to, if you can get out your phone, Ella, and just go to www.menti.com and use the code 4582376.
4582376.
That's right. So we've got lots of Landcare, Coast Guard and Friends groups. We've got a few regional NRMs, a few NGOs and 1 individual. Okay. Hopefully most of everyone's had a chance to do that. That just gives, oh, got another
Still
one.
going up.
Okay, yep. Another regional NRM.
That's a lovely cross section of people have joined us today. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. You can leave that open, your phone open, because we're going to have a couple of other questions in a little while. So just leave that open. And now I'll invite I'll stop sharing that screen. And so we can all see each other again. And I'll invite our first speaker, which is Jim Adams, who's the CEO of the National Landcare Network. So we're very lucky to have him join us today to talk about the Australian Communities Landcare Futures Framework. And I'm sure he'll tell us a whole lot more about that and about some other things as well. So I'll hand over to you now, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie, and thank you also to Jack and Louise for the invitation to come along today. This is really exciting. This is the first time I've been in this role in one of these things, so I'm really looking forward to having this chat with you today and welcome the opportunity to be here. I'll just get Jess to share her screen with us. We've got a little presentation, just a single slide. While she's doing that, I'll just acknowledge that I'm joining you today from Bidwell country in Far East Gippsland in Victoria, very close to the town of Malakuta that got burnt out so severely in the bushfires a couple of years ago. So just starting off, we just thought we'd, before we spoke in detail about the Landcare Futures Framework, we'd give you a little bit of background as to the nature of the National Landcare Network very quickly. As you can see there, our members estimate that there's in excess of 160,000 land carers around the country. That number is very fluid and very hard to measure, of course. They are made up of individuals, groups, networks. The networks, the groups are sort of estimated to be around about 5,000. And those are groups that are actually members of the state and territory organisations like West Australian Landcare Network, Landcare New South Wales, Landcare Victoria and others. And the NLN is made up of those 8 members. So the members that represent or that form the NLN are the state and territory organisations, 8 of them, 1 in each state and territory. And they, one from each of them, each of the members is on the board of the National Landcare Network, but more importantly, 3 from each of the members, three nominees, grassroots nominees from each member sits on our members council, which is the very important representative heart of the NLN, as we like to call it. So we'll just go on to the next slide, and I'll talk to you another day. Jack promises me that I'll get to talk to you another day about advocacy and the strengths of advocacy and what one needs to be an effective advocate. But just to give you a sense of the things that the NLN is currently advocating around with a range of different partners. There's the Landcare Futures Framework, which we'll talk about in some detail at the minute. The Shaping the Future of Landcare project, which is the Landcare roadmap out of which the Futures Framework emerged. We've played a significant role recently in advocating around the NLP2 review and arranging for our members to also get that opportunity. We've advocated to the Federal Minister and the Department recently for a role in advocating on behalf of Landcare in the co-design of the NLP3. We're optimistic that we're going to get a seat at that table. We're currently working with NRM Regions Australia on a regional framework, which Jack is on the working group of and helping us to advocate on behalf of our members in that space. We've participated in the Ag Stewardship Working Group, which is a working group established by Minister Littleproud to support the ag stewardship program that is currently rolling out. Many would be aware that we've been involved in advocating on behalf of our members with Landcare Australia in the development of a collaboration agreement with the objective of getting to a single national voice for Landcare through that negotiation or that advocacy with Landcare Australia. Also with Landcare Australia, we stood on steering committees for the National Conference, the Landcare Farming Project, and also have sought to advocate on behalf of our members on the Landcare project, which is a digital platform that Landcare Australia have been working on. As well as that, we also advocated for and were successful in jointly with Landcare Australia getting the Landcare-led bushfire project up. I have to apologise to our West Australian colleagues. We tried hard to get that extended to West Australia, but the federal government just weren't having any. We're also currently advocating to see if we can get that program extended into a round 2. The NLP3 doesn't commence until June 23, and there's essentially a 12-month gap between the finish of the current Landcare-led bushfire project and NLP3. And we're hoping to see if we can maintain some of the momentum that's being created through the Landcare-led bushfire project, which, although unfortunately, as I say, it didn't extend to West Australia, has been very, very successful in building partnerships and building capacity and engagement with Landcare and a wide range of other groups in the areas where it has occurred. So those are all external examples of external advocacy that we're currently working on. Of course, all of those advocacy efforts requires a lot of internal advocacy or consultation or mandate development through our membership and the representative structures. The three main structures that we use are obviously the Members' Council, but we also have a forum with the state and territory executive officers, Jack and her colleagues around the country, and of course also our board, where we go through a proper formal approvals process of anything that comes through from the Members' Council. So thanks, Jess. So that's basically the sort of scope of the advocacy we've been doing, going back now to the Landcare Futures Framework. I just wanted to, we will later on, there's a section I see later on about keeping in touch and further input. Those are our contacts there, and you can contact us through those and also get a look at the Landcare Community Futures Framework online at that web address if you haven't already got it. Okay, so going to the Futures Framework itself, and I'm sorry, I need to try and shrink my screen a little bit. Jess, can you take us back to the, that's it, thank you.
Okay.
Good on you. So the Futures Framework itself, this piece of work arose out of the Community Roadmap project that the NLN commenced really about 18 months ago. And we realised that Landcare had never actually produced a roadmap for itself. There was lots of organisations within Landcare that produced strategic plans and roadmaps and all sorts of planning instruments, but nobody had ever sat down with Community Landcare and said, where does Community Landcare see itself in the NRM, the natural resource management and community resilience world, and where does it want to go, and how does it want to position itself to be continue to be important and supported in particular going forward. And so we started a project called the Community Roadmap Project, but we were aware when that project started that we had an election coming up shortly, and we hoped that that project would help us to inform putting together a policy statement that we could use to go into that election to advocate on behalf of our members. And so while the roadmap project is ongoing, the Community Landcare Futures Framework is the policy statement that's emerged out of the consultation around the roadmap, and then also some specific consultation on the framework itself. So we've been through quite a number of workshops and sessions with our members council, with the NLN executive officer groups, and with our board to develop the Community Futures Framework. And it's basically a bid over the next 5 years for $48 million for Landcare to be given the status of a national delivery partner by the federal government, and obviously for that to be funded and supported. We have to give some credit not only to our members, of course, but also to the idea which was initially sort of dangled in front of us, if you like, by Minister Lee, who said, Landcare should consider, that concept of becoming a national delivery partner. Now, we've done so very specifically in this framework on the basis of additional funding to the current Regional Lands Partnership Program, so that we're not seeking, to become a national delivery partner in competition with regional bodies. In fact, we see Landcare becoming a national delivery partner as being complementary to, and in fact, providing the opportunity for Landcare to more proactively engage with the regional delivery and the Regional Land Partnerships Program. There's 3 elements to the framework. The first is the Landcare Futures Community Investment Program, which is essentially a community grants program. We're looking in this whole program, by the way, to build on what we've learned and the partnerships we've built in the Landcare-led bushfire program, where we've had very, very successful program of what we've called facilitated grants, where state and territory organisations such as West Australian Landcare Network have been actually supported to assist groups to engage. So almost to fulfil a sort of a facilitation role to assist groups to participate and engage and to report and to basically manage their involvement in the project. So we're looking to roll that out through the Landcare Futures Community Investment Program. And that accounts for 67%, I think, going from memory, of the total funding suggestion for that program. The other stream, or another stream, is the Landcare Futures Environmental Markets Leadership Program. We have lots of approaches, and we've been involved in a few discussions with both Lou and Jack about this, and every one of our members, about the emerging environmental markets, and like the carbon plus and the natural remnant vegetation pilot opportunities. And we see a real need and a real opportunity for Landcare to support the state and territory organisations to develop leadership capacity in that space. And so we've seen an opportunity to include that as part of the framework. And then the Landcare Futures Innovation Program, which is a knowledge sharing and information exchange mechanism supported by a Landcare Futures facilitator, which is a role not dissimilar to the National Landcare Coordinator role, which existed some years ago but was abolished by the government, and really seeks to fulfill that function of encouraging the network to make better use of the network opportunities that are available to us. Landcare is a fabulous resource, and there are many opportunities for us to strengthen the networking that occurs, and we see that role as being, and that source, or that element, as being key to that. So we've heard a very loud and united call for targeted investment Landcare through our members into capacity and into building resilience. I think one of the questions that was posed in this section was, what's the Landcare Futures Framework all about? When you get a chance to have a look at it, on the first page, there's a line that says, there has never been a more important time nor greater opportunity to support local communities to contribute to community-based natural resource management and community resilience. That's, in a sentence, that's what it's about. It's about seeking an opportunity to really grasp the moment where there really has not been a more important time, with all of the issues that we're facing around climate change and other challenges, to support local communities, to build resilience, to actually address some of those challenges. Jack, I think I'm probably getting pretty close to my 10 minutes. So I think I'm happy to leave it there at this stage. So that's, a snapshot of, I suppose, if you like, the advocacy efforts that the NLN is undertaking. We're hopeful that there'll be, we've had some success, of course, with the $10 million, the $14 million bushfire recovery project. We have submitted the Futures Framework to the current government. We've been advised that it's been warmly received. So one doesn't know what that means in the lead up to an election. And of course, as one does with all advocacy, we've also shared it with opposition and crossbenchers. And really from here, it's about advocating and promoting it as widely and as deeply through the network as possible. And we'll be talking with the state and territory organisations, including WA shortly. We have developed a communications plan around the Futures Framework, and the idea is to, as I say, advocate it and to use those resources that we've developed, which is the long version and the A4 placemat version, to advocate it as far and as wide as possible. The hope would be that it might inform the design of the National Landcare Program version 3. So we've got a kind of, if you like, a kind of a pincer movement. We've got a proposal that we're putting up and putting forward and hoping to advocate into the process. We're also hoping to participate in the co-design steering committee of that NLP3, which of course is, really is very essential to our membership. In other than money that people manage to raise locally, and the money that's raised by Landcare Australia.
Thanks very much. Sorry, that's fantastic, Jim. I just think we probably better move along so we can, and then you'll have lots of opportunity to answer everyone's questions. So thank you very much for all you've shared with us as an overview. So now we're just going to go back to the Mentimeter. So if you can all grab your phones out again, and we'll go on to the next question. This is just so that Jim and Louise have some ideas of what you would like to see advocated for. So the first question, hopefully you can all see that. What are your group's biggest issues that you would like us to advocate for? So this is just going to come up as a word cloud, so you can put two different responses. So just one or two words. Now, if anyone has joined since we started, just if you grab your phone and just go to www.menti, which is menti.com, and then put in the code 4582376. So has everyone got the question up? Yep, someone's put some things in, so someone must have it. So take it away. What are your group's biggest issues that you would like us to advocate for?
A nice mix there already. Well, that's interesting. Every time it changes. Oh, okay. Climate change, funding, swapping
Funding.
prevalence. Yeah.
Funding. Yep, climate change stuff, funding. Salinity's up there too.
One slightly different word, and it doesn't build on the central word, but you can see where we've got a lot of funding there, and
Yep.
money's an alternative way of saying
money.
that, people funded.
Local land care officers, core funding, feral animals, Indigenous led, less land clearing, capacity, DBCA funding, people funding.
Security, I suspect that means security of income flow for groups.
Revegetations come up a couple of times, Indigenous capacity, core funding, landholder responsibility, coordination, on-ground funding, halt clearing, retain trees, political support, core funding. Funding's definitely coming up there a lot in all different ways.
Show me the money is what it's saying. Where's the flow? And Jim's just shown us where some of it hopefully will come from.
Yeah, that's really good. If anyone hasn't had a chance to put it in, we'll give just a few more seconds. If anyone didn't get the code, call out. Okay, I think everyone's got it. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. That's really helpful, and we'll be able to provide a copy of that at the end of the session as well, so people can see the results. So we'll move to the next question. What does your group need funding for most? So it's kind of a similar question, but it's more specifically asking what we've all said we need funding, but what do we need it for? So you've got two opportunities, so two different answers you can give for what you need most funding for. So take it away. Who's going to be first? Okay.
Wow, okay.
Coordinators, facilitators, threatened species, trees and fences, staff, weeds, feral animals.
Well, it's very encouraging because Wallen's looking at a trial across the state to see how we can increase funding for coordinators. And if we look at that, we've got coordinators, coordination, and coordinator and staff. It's, you know, everyone's experiencing that same real shortage of capacity in that coordination role. Core coordination, core office costs, so hard to get funded, same as the coordination roles.
Yeah.
Techs, time to seek funding, you know, isn't that just the truth? Who's ever got time to do the applications and then the reporting while you're out there trying to keep it all moving? Fantastic.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, I'll just give 5 more seconds. So if you haven't put your answer in, do it straight away. Okay, so now we'll move to the last question before we have the opportunity for you to actually put your hand up and ask questions. Okay, so this is the last one. What are the most important landcare issues in WA that we need governments to know about? So once again, you have two responses you can give. Okay.
Wow, look at salinity and water, dry climate.
Climate change, re-veg, clearing.
A dire DBCA budget, absolutely. That's our Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, Jim and Jess, equivalent of, it used to be Parks and Wildlife have become a subset of them now, and it used to be the whole department.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things there, and some of them have doubled up with salinity and dry water in a drying climate, water resources, landscape restoration, burnout, revegetation of natives. Sorry.
And your budget surplus last year was only what, $5 billion?
Yeah, exactly. It's shameful. Lack of good governance is interesting too. We might unpack that a little bit down the track and hear what people's thoughts are on that. Someone like to put some more in the chat there. That would be interesting to capture where you're talking specifically about.
Okay, so we'll give just a couple more seconds. We've still got a few coming through. But yes, we will have, like I said, we'll send out a copy of these PDF of this Menti after the session. And yeah, if you do want to put something in the chat, or otherwise you can email me. I'll put an email address at the end so that you can, if you want to expand on what you've put in your answers here. Or otherwise you can put your hand up and talk about them soon after. Okay, so I think we're pretty much finished now. So thank you all very much for participating in that session. I'll stop sharing now and we can all see our smiling faces again. And now I'd like to hand over to Louise. And Louise is really interested to hear everyone's questions, I think, but I'll hand over to Louise and Louise can take it from there. And it's great to have Louise back with us. She used to run a lot of these Landcare Checks In last year. She's working with us and we do miss her, but we know she's gone on to great things with the NLN board. So take it away, Louise.
Thanks, Carly. Be awesome if people who currently haven't got their videos on, if you don't mind popping them on, and when you talk, if you want to just switch them off because you haven't got great internet, that's awesome, because it just means that we can eyeball each other and know what each other looks like. And I think the reason why we're all here today is because, you know, those diagrams, they're not new to us. We've experienced and lived with some of the issues of working in Landcare for decades, really. Those of you who've come more recently will just be having some of those experiences iterated that we have had from the past, which is that it's not taken seriously enough. And so that's why it's fantastic to see the NLN putting together this Landcare Futures framework. And I think yeah, the question that was popped into the chat from Kathy, basically going, so the 48 millions in addition to and complements the regional Landcare land partnership program, you know, did that come as a trade-off? It is additional to, so Jim has responded, it's additional to, and one of the points I wanted to make, because I asked exactly this question of Jim too, and that is this particular framework is saying make sure Landcare, community Landcare is at every table. So that's one of the most important messages, is that we have the capacity, because we're community based, of helping with delivery of a whole bunch of other programs too, but we need that capacity. So we need to have people with coordination money so that they are there continuing in their community, and many of us have been in our communities for decades. We're the people who stick and we know who's who, and so when things happen, being able to have enough capacity to get up and deliver, rather than delivery happening from at distance, either, you know, at worst from federal departments, and sometimes it's from the state, when we know that it's best done as local as you can. So I just wanted to make that distinction that, yeah, it's actually about our capacity to be able to deliver programs that we know our community needs and wants.
Can I let Jim jump in there, Lou? He's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks. Thanks, Jack. Thanks. The answer to that question, sorry, that wasn't me who made the next comment. The $48 million is definitely intended, it's over 5 years, and it's definitely intended to be additional to the existing Regional Lands Partnerships program. We're not telling the federal government where to find it. The National Landcare program is $1 billion project, of which $450 million goes to the Regional Lands Partnership program. And what we're saying to the federal government is that we think they should find an extra 48 million out of that billion, or the remaining 550 million, to support Landcare as a national delivery partner alongside of and supporting the regional bodies.
Yeah, I think the other point that Kathy is making too, Jim, and that is that WA Landcare Network has been working really hard over the last few years and continuing to really press the state government to come to the party. In WA, unlike several of the other states, we do not have the state government coming with some of that funding. Yes, we've got the land stewardship grants, but they are for on-ground projects, and they don't fund coordination. They fund this tiny little bit of coordination money. It's just not sufficient for us to do the best that we know that we can. So I think that's a real challenge for us, is actually having the value of Landcare. And there is a report that's currently being put together, and I just wanted to point out that Danielle Brady, who's on the call today, do you want to just wave, Danielle? Is putting together that report, which is about the value of Landcare in Western Australia. And we don't have that described, which they have done in several of the other states. So it's really an advocacy tool for WA. So it's good that that's being put together, and I'm having some input into that. Have people got some specific questions they want to make?
There is one. There's a question in the chat from Linda Metz, who I believe is at the South West Catchments Council. Welcome, Linda. Linda's question is, will the 3 streams all be based on grant style applications, competitive in nature? How to avoid groups having to compete with one another for a limited bucket of funding, especially given the demands on resourcing and staffing?
Yep, great question, and it goes in part to what Louise was just talking about, and I was really interested watching that second Menti slide and the really clear focus on the need for coordinators and support for coordinators. The answer is no. Only the first stream is in fact competitive grants or small grants. The other 2 streams are actually streams to support the state and territory organisations to provide a service to the grassroots through their state and territory organisations, and would in many cases go to support coordinators, or at least in part support the funding of coordinators to fulfil those 2 roles around environmental markets and helping groups to engage in environmental market type programs, of which we're all getting seeing many examples, but also that second program around the knowledge sharing, which is very much specifically about trying to allocate some funding to support coordination through the state and territory organisations.
Thanks, Jim.
Colma, you've got your hand up there.
I just wondered whether, when you were doing some of your work, particularly number 2 about the leadership program, and also the other work you've been doing about fire, whether you've also hooked into the previous farm business resilience program. There's lots of stuff around on that. I can send you some notes about all the modules. I could see it being adapted in some ways.
Coleman, no, we haven't. One of the amazing things about Landcare is there's so much knowledge out there. we can tap into. So thank you for that. That would be really, really interesting to know about and to see. Thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge Jo Ludbrook's just saying farewell. Jo's our Deputy Chair at Wallen, and as a very, very busy woman, I think she wears about 17 hats at the moment, Jo, and gives tirelessly to lots of our small groups. So thanks for joining us today. Any questions from anyone? I can't see any hands waving. Questions, comments? Hope I'm not missing anyone. Can you see anyone, Lou?
No. Jim, with regard to the middle one, the Landcare Futures Environmental Markets Leadership Program, and that is just so important because we are all being inundated by what I refer to as this whole pool of people who want to partner now with farmers and with Landcare groups in a variety of carbon-related markets. And it's incredibly daunting to try to sift through, you know, who's a shark, who's a meat eater, and who's a vegetarian. So I feel like it's been something that WA Landcare Network has been really keen to do, is try to help. And that's what this would do too, is to really help to see who are the vegetarians who are actually going to be partnering with landholders and with Landcare groups, because Landcare groups can play a really important role to help bring together groups of landholders to make a meaningful contribution and to get a proper biodiversity and other values out of engaging at all with carbon. Do you want to make comment about that?
Yep, indeed. Absolutely, Louise. I mean, you're 100% right in what you're saying there. And the NLN is experiencing a similar, and there's so many people who want to connect to Landcare and essentially use it as a marketing tool to A, be able to say they've got a connection with Landcare, and B, use it as a way of getting access to land. And really, that's what it comes down to engage in their environmental marketing projects. And it is very hard to know who are the sharks and who are the vegetarians. And that is exactly the purpose of that program, that we can actually get some Landcare people in that space that become experts in that space, and that the STOs have those experts within their organisations or within their network at least. How people place those people, would be entirely up to them, but it would get that capacity out there and help Landcare to support its members and its participants in that space, so that they're not at the mercy of the meat eaters or the sharks or whatever. So yeah, it's everywhere we've gone in recent years, the call has been for coordinators. Even the states that do have coordinators, supported by their state governments, New South Wales and Victoria, the funding for those coordinators is either under threat or there isn't enough of it, and it doesn't support sufficient coordinators. And that's starting to be recognised now. As I say, we've tried to make sure that there is funding for coordinators in this package. We had to give it a label and give it a justification, but this package is about coordinator funding in those second two programs, and we know that the opposition are looking at a different program. They've seen this, they like it, they say if the government adopt it and budget for it, they won't abolish it, but they're not adopting it as their policy. They have a policy around Landcare Rangers, which is a slightly interesting term, but it's also about coordinators. So they are certainly, the word about Landcare needing coordinators has well and truly been heard,
Great,
and
Jim.
different people are taking different approaches to how they might respond.
Look at that. Can I throw to Helen, please, who's got her hand up?
Thanks, Jack. Just on the biodiversity, that I'm finding that in the northern part of Western Australia, where I live, a lot of the time now, it sort of with the carbon planting and things like that, it's a real monoculture, and I think we need to get away and definitely have people in there that can perhaps try and stop some of that monoculture, make sure that there's all levels of biodiversity going into these carbon areas.
Thanks, Helen. There's a couple of questions also in the chat related to the community investment program, really directed for you, I think, Jim. So Bruce is asking, what does surge capacity mean in that program? And Kathy Dawson is saying, when will the structure of the rollout of the Landcare community investment program occur? If it got funded, presumably, Kathy. Yeah, over to you, Jim.
So surge capacity is an interesting one. When you're sort of advocating, you listen out for things that political advisors, tell you, the minister might be interested in, and you pick up on some little things. And surge capacity is something that Minister Lee is particularly interested in, and it particularly came out of the bushfire response. That there's a recognition, and it's something that we call up pent-up capacity or pent-up demand, as in there's all these groups waiting out there and looking for support, and if you do give them support, then they can respond really quickly. They're on the ground, they're in the community, they're probably the affected people in many cases. Look at the floods in New South Wales and Victoria. There's a massive number of Landcare groups in that area who are responding, and the ability of those groups to respond is thought of by the minister as surge capacity, and so it's a term that we adopted because we knew it would have resonance. So that's what that's what surge capacity is. The other question, Louise, can you remind me? What?
Kathy, do you want to just ask your question direct?
You're on mute, Kathy.
Not often you shut me up. Yes, when have you got some vision on how you're going to be structuring the 67% of the funding that's allocated in this area? I'm just very concerned that we're not going to have one of the Barnaby Joyce's $25,000 grants, which really is, we just can't make use of that because the fund amount is too small.
Yeah. Kathy, thanks. A great question. So in the bushfire Landcare bushfire recovery program, we actually had 3 levels, I think: small grants, large grants, and an intermediate level of grant. And really, it provided for the opportunity for people to bid for anything up to $300,000. I think was the biggest of the large grants that we had to make it, of course, spread a little bit as well. That was $14 million. This fund, by the way, or this program at $48 million over 5 years, is intended to be of around the same scale as the bushfire recovery program. That was another thing that we did strategically to be able to say to government, look, we've done this before, we've handled this kind of money before, we can manage this. And certainly the intent is that those grant programs, and we would see it being managed in exactly the same way through the SDOs and also with Landcare Australia. We acknowledge Landcare Australia has got very good capacity in grant management and administration. We don't have that. Some of the SDOs do have that. And so we would look at an adaptive model that where people had the capacity to do that themselves, they would do it themselves, but where they didn't, they'd have the opportunity to hire that service from Landcare Australia. The NLN is not particularly interested in setting itself up as a grant management agency. We are here to advocate, and we're not interested in building the NLN into an empire. And there are people out there within our network, both within Landcare Australia and the SDOs who have the skills and the capacities to do that. So, you know, we're not going to look to reinvent the wheel. So it's certainly the intention that, yes, there will be a range of grant sizes, and we would intend to roll it out with Landcare Australia's, you know, consent and willingness and to come on board, and we would hope they would, you know, to support, help support the program. Otherwise, you know, grant management through Smarty Grants is, you know, probably something you can buy off the shelf from, you know, a number of different sources, but we'd much rather do it with, you know, an internal Landcare partner.
Just over to a question from Kane. Really, it's a comment about good to have diversity of funding streams, but when you've got a whole range of different streams, it means that you've even got more of that demand on coordinators to sort of meet those different streams, and particularly if they're not large projects, you end up sort of dividing up your time and writing up for programs. And I can see Helen's nodding her head in that in agreement to that. So wondering if you can look at that differently and simplifying funding programs to reduce that demand.
Yep. So if I can just sort of go back to the first, if we liken the first stream of the framework to the bushfire recovery program, what happened there was that we sought to make sure that a roughly equal amount of money went to each of the states and territories, that there was opportunity for groups to apply for a range of different sizes of grants depending on their needs and the degree of amalgamation and other partners that they involved, and that the facilitators, what we call the program delivery partners, who basically were the states and territory organisations, were supported to facilitate the involvement of groups. In other words, they were paid to support the facilitation, the participation of groups in that project. And the government were perfectly happy for us to do that. The government really weren't, I don't want to say they weren't concerned. Let me just put it factually, they approved up to 10% of that program going to support the delivery partners to facilitate that program. So of the $14 million, $1.4 million was able to go to support Landcare Australia, the National Landcare Network, and each of the 5 states and territory organisations that were involved to deliver the program in a facilitated, supported manner that helped the groups to actually engage, participate, and report, and you know, in the program. That's a very significant move. Up until recently, the department have been very reluctant to, you know, see funding go to facilitation and coordination. So, you know, that was and it really made the difference in this project. I mean, and we've been at great pains in our reporting and advocacy around the success of the bushfire recovery program to point out to government, look, the reason this worked was because, you know, you allowed us to do it in the traditional Landcare way, from the bottom up and with coordination and support of the grassroots.
Thanks, Jim. Colma, have you got your hand up, or is that an old one?
Yeah, just quickly, in response to Helen's question and other people's concerns about biodiversity, carbon plantings and monocultures, I'm sure we probably all know about the work that Citizen Science has done through Conservation Council, and Claire Greenwell's now the manager there, where they've gone back and looked at a whole lot of the Landcare planting sites to look at where the best habitat is happening. So very much the focus on habitat for these plantings.
Thanks,
yeah, I wanted
Colma.
to respond to that comment that you made, Helen. Again, what we've had here is, you know, a market running ahead of the regulation, as we so often have, and, you know, carbon planters, you know, buying up property, going out and, you know, just shutting the gate basically, or planting monocultures, and having, you know, really significant impacts on local communities, but also on biodiversity. So we've now got the government, and part of this ag stewardship carbon plus biodiversity pilot scheme that the government have currently got going, and also the environmental markets bill that actually is in front of Parliament at the moment, which seeks to set in place the framework for the trading framework of the credits that can be earned out of this process. Certainly are designed to start to, I'm not sure that they go far enough yet, but they're certainly designed to address some of those issues in terms of the eligibility of certain activities for credits and certain entities for credits. So they're seeking to sort of manage some of those things by saying, well, you know, if you're going to plant a monoculture, you're not necessarily going to qualify for credits and so forth. So yeah, too little, too late, probably, but and closing the gate after the flock has bolted. Yeah.
I also just wanted to add with that one, through Gondwana Link, we're certainly looking at how to get the gold standard if you're going to be getting engaged with it, and that there is some additional funding for habitat created, so you can get a carbon extra dollars to be made, but that tends to be international money in addition to the standard. So the other thing that Gondwana Link is doing is putting together some restoration standards and a short movie. So really trying to encourage people to know what that looks like so that we actually get good outcomes.
Yep.
There was... Yep.
Sorry, Lou. Kylie just wanted to check in with people about running a little bit late. You're muted, Kylie.
I'll unmute myself. Yes, we're nearly at time. So, and I notice a few people have already left. So we don't really want to keep anyone on much longer than an hour. So I noticed a few other people have put some comments in the chat. So if Jim and Louise, you want to check those before you go, but we don't really have time to answer any more questions at this stage, I don't think.
I did, yeah. Louise. So if I just respond to a couple of them, one of which Alo's made that point that all of the Landcare groups tend to be under the pump anyway, and then there becomes an extra need. And I think going back to the example of the fire response, where it did have extra capacity, so you put on extra capacity, that's what's needed, so that it's additional to our current project load. And I think that some of the previous programs haven't been like that. They haven't actually come with some actual additional people capacity to do something. The second thing I wanted to point to, and it's in one of the boxes within the framework, and that is the example which I've talked about a little bit before with Tasmania, and that is, I think that WA Landcare Network could be getting a bit of a project bank together. So they've got one of those, which is effectively saying, what are some big projects that our groups would like to crack on with, so that we've got basically a project bank for WA. And I know that WA Landcare Network and a couple of other large groups have been talking about the Restore the Wheat Belt as one of those, a larger scale, big project, and looking for a carrier, some funders for it. You know, what else have people got on that they really think are crucial, so that we can actually get some bigger things if opportunity comes up, and that we're ready to roll with them.
That sounds great. That sounds like a really good idea. So,
and I thought, just to Kylie, the other one, Eddie's saying something very positive there, that the Environment Minister is asking the government to spend $1 on green infrastructure, the stuff that we do in Landcare, for every $1 spent on built infrastructure. So that's good to see. This is to be encouraged, and maybe a little note to say, like your initiative.
No, it was actually asking for it, not saying it's been done.
It's asking for it, yeah.
Yep.
Before we finish, Lou, could you just share that lovely succinct thing you said to me yesterday that gives people something to take away if they're talking to their pollies, please?
Yeah, well, this is like our opportunity to go in for a little cuppa with our local politician. And I think there's too many people who just feel like not another election, nobody listens anyway. But they can listen, and it's great to go in there. It doesn't matter. We need to be approaching the opposition. They might get in. They need to actually do better than they've done. They haven't signed on to our framework. Why can't they sign on to our framework as well as their Ranger program? They could. So that's what that side, the Greens, I think they know about us, they care about us, that they have provided additional funding before. It's really great to say yes, and to go to the current government because they might be in there too. And it's also just to really make sure that they are on board. So this is the time to go and talk to them, because that's the way that Landcare just goes up in their frontal lobes, because it's a crowded space at this time of the political season.
Yes.
We need to tell them what we want, and lots of people need to do it and say what Landcare we want and what biodiversity revegetation with local native species.
Indeed, Mary.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, everyone, for spending your hour with us. And thank you so much to Jim and Louise for sharing your time and your insights. And I've left a link for the document in the chat, and Louise has put her email. I'll put mine in. And yeah, if you have any further comments, please feel free to contact us, and we'll be getting back to you with the results from the Mentee exercise we did. So thank you very much.
And it's a great question from Kathy. Yep, I think that WA Landcare Network probably can send all members a little set of dot points about what to raise. That would be a good idea, and we usually do it about now.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Lou. Everyone who joined, it was wonderful. And it's recorded and it'll be up on our site, so you can listen in.
Thank you.
Bye.